You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Best of the Week, the show where we go through the best comics if we can find some. I'm here, as always, with my man Gray. What up, Gray?
What up, Jim? It's early morning here in Japan, Saturday, and I'm raring to go.
You are, it's late night here, and I'm ready for bed. That's what I am. But
we reversed our roles, haven't we?
We have reversed our roles because we actually talked this morning about Grant Morrison when I was just waking. I was just waking up, and you were going to bed as well. So here we are, and just a shout out to a bunch of people who did get a hold of me and asked what had happened because we haven't had a best of in the last couple of weeks, and they ended up asking, is it because the comic stunk? That wasn't the case. I ended up being busy with some crazy things here at the house. You were busy, so we just ended up just not having it. But we're back. We're back here tonight to do this, or tonight
by
for me, morning
demand.
for you. Well, yes, such popular demand. But it is one of those where, Jim, what happened to the best of? I love that show, and I love what Gray has to say. It's never a compliment to me. It's always you, and I'm getting sick of it, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you're just saying that to make sure I keep doing it with you.
Well, that's why I'm trying to convince you. But that's usually what people say when they're fighting with me. So we're going to go. We don't have a ton of books this week. And I mean, DC hardly had anything come out again. They don't have a lot coming out. It seems like they are waiting till after Absolute Power, and then they're going to maybe hit with some more books.
Yeah.
Marvel had some bigger things going on, but again, a bunch of our stuff is actually going to be the indie side of things, including a surprise where you reminded me of something, and I had to put it in to pretty much prove that I don't have a vendetta. Maybe against you. Maybe I do have one against people, commending you for your great deal and not me, but not on possibly David P. Post, which is a little hint. But we're going to start with DC Comics. And the pick, we only have one. And it's a weird play because there was a big issue of Batman that came out this week. Not great. But what we're picking is something that you ended up picking last month when the first issue came out. And it got me excited to read it and then even read this number 2. I agree with you. It's the Boy Wonder, number 2, written and art by Junie Ba. It is $6. It's one of the crazy things. It's a black label book, prestige format, $6. And we even talked about it last month, the idea that it kind of feels all ages. This one gets a little more mature.
It does.
Because it is a Jason Todd story, but it's still pretty good. I mean, it still gives you some good Jason Todd. And I love the interaction between Jason and Damian because you don't really see that enough. And to me, they're very similar. They're very similar in the way that they think of things. They're a little over the top, so I thought it was pretty good. But you tell me why you like it.
I'm the same, I've been looking, I've been hungry for a good Jason Todd story for a while, and a Damian one. And I think the fact that Junie Baz, he seems to be focusing on different Robins with each issue, doesn't he? He just really gets it. People have said, yeah, we've had this before, but I don't know. For me, Jim, he's got the voices, he's got the characters really well, and it's kind of moving.
Yeah, I like it. And when I read it, it's that weird play, because I'm not really loving the Batman book. And this week you have Jason Todd. You have some big things with Jason Todd, but they didn't feel right. They didn't feel earned. And then you get into this book, which I'll tell you, if you didn't like the art in the first issue, it is so exaggerated, the art. I loved it. I'm telling you, there's one panel where you have Jason Todd from the side profile deal, and his helmet is so damn big that I don't think his neck could, and I loved it. I thought it looked so cool. But it almost feels like, and when you said about the idea of, we've seen this before, whatever, it's this weird play of maybe kind of almost like an ultimate Jason Todd, or like an ultimate, you're getting classic stuff that you might have seen before, but it's still good. It's grabbing the good stuff and showing you good interactions and getting feels from it that I'm not getting from the regular books, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You're saying about the cartoony style. I love it as well. I know a lot of people seem to not sure about it, but the scenes where it shows how damaged he is. I mean, we actually see Jason with his mask off. Oh my God. Even though it's cartoony, it works.
It works. And I don't know. The first issue of the art threw me out a little bit. I had to get used to it. But here I just jumped in. I'm already used to it. I really liked it. I really do recommend people check it out. Maybe because of the price point, maybe wait till it's in trade, or if you have the app. And I do read digitally. I'm sure it looks even better, on the page just in your hand and things like that. But I think it's a really, really good book. And I think you'd agree that it was the best book from DC this week, because that's all our picks from DC. We have The Boy Wonder, which then means we're going to move over to Marvel. And I hope that people realize we're going rocket here. We're going to get through this. We're going to end up being lickety split, because there's not that many books, but also because we want to keep it manageable, and I am tired. But the Marvel side of things, we actually have 3 books from Marvel, which is crazy. And we're going to start with the big one. The thing is, it's not as good as I hoped it would be, but it's still on the list from what score I gave it. It's Ultimates #1, written by either Dennis or Denise Camp. I know that Gabe said it's definitely Denise, and it looks like it's spelled that way. Art by Juan Frigeri. And it's, again, a $6 book. It's the first part, starting off this Ultimates deal. And I've been waiting for the Ultimates to come out, thinking that it's going to kickstart the other books. The problem I have with this whole Ultimate line and the Ultimate Universe is the convoluted backstory. And I think a lot of people have that problem. In fact, I think a lot of people didn't even read the whole Ultimate Invasion, Ultimate Universe, and don't know the story coming in. They give you a good recap at the beginning, but it also then kind of bogs down the first half of this issue. But once it kicks in, I think it's really cool and what I expected. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. It did get a bit complicated with the build-up. The first half of the issue, I was kind of scratching my head at points. And I did read, Jim, I read Ultimate Universe 1 before this. But the second half saves it, and it really raised the score for me. It got so exciting. The action came in. We saw some classic characters. Ant-Man and the Wasp were in there. The original one, sorry. And yeah, but I got to ask you about the art. I'm not quite sold on the way he does the faces.
Yeah, I didn't love the art. And that was one of the other things. I mean, this should be the big book. This should be huge. This should be something that when you look at it, it's that top tier art. I didn't think Juan Figueri's art was great. It was okay.
Some of the characters were good, but some were a bit like, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think the coloring was a little off, too. It was very muted at a lot of points. It didn't seem to pop, right? And when you go, the first bit, and again, I'm not saying it was as convenient. Like, me and you both kind of got what was going on. But what I'm saying, it still is overly complicated. And once you start doing the timey-wimey stuff of, well, we could go back half hour before this, and then it throws a lot of things out, and they even have to hand wave the idea of, well, we won't go back in time to fix the big thing because we couldn't stop it the first time. Well, that doesn't mean we couldn't then, but they already realized, Dennis Camp realizes we can't keep doing that. But in the meantime, we find out that all of those orbs that he sent back, it seems like Peter was the only one who actually knew what to do with it, or did it. You end up having them say that a bunch of people got orbs, ended up dying because of that. And young Tony, Iron Lad, he feels like he's been bad by giving him that. So in this, you do find out Hank, Pym, and Janet, they do end up where Hank got I'll ask you just straight up here, and hopefully most people have read this, but the idea that Hank gets that orb, he doesn't use it because he looks at pretty much what seems to be like the PDF that came with it, that gave him his background. Why, if you're Tony Stark, would you tell Hank, by the way, if you use this, you might be a wife beater. And if you use this, you might make Ultron. Like, why would you? That's not a good selling point to get people to get involved in your deal. But he ends up doing it anyway by the end. But Janet, she's all fired up. She just gets going, and she's a quick study. Like, even then, it seems a little quick. And I think that a lot of people ended up kind of confused. Like, this is another universe that ended up where the maker takes away things because he wants his own ultimate, because he's from the Ultimate Universe. He wants to go back. He even asked Miles to go with him. Miles turned him down. But when he gets there, it's not quite the 616, but everything was kind of like that. So they're using this back and forth, and it gets a little bit confusing overall of, why did we have to get so convoluted with it? And just so people know, spoiler alert, whatever. But they even say at the beginning, this Dr. Doom is Reed Richards of that Earth as well, which some people were confused because Reed's also the maker, and you
I saw that a lot. Who was Reed and what's going on? And wait a minute, which universe is the maker from then?
Yeah. And even then, when they're showing pictures and talking about the 616, it felt weird. But once you get past that, I do want to point out too, at the very beginning, it's pretty funny if you go into it just thinking that through all of this, they just have Cap in an ice block behind them. Like, he's just there.
Decoration like Han Solo, you know.
He is. He's like Han Solo. He's 100%. Like, why? And then they seem to just let him melt out, and then he goes crazy.
Jim, I've got to ask you one more thing, like being a bit of an Anglophile, you know, British guy like me. Captain Britain, speaking French, what's going on there?
Yeah, that was crazy. The French Captain Britain seemed to be like a wink of getting people upset.
France took over England, in this universe, I guess.
And that's the other thing. In the back, you do have the whole round deal. You have that council of, but again, that seems too complicated at the beginning. I wish that this just was, hey, here's this cool universe where you're going to get what you want and let's go forward. I do think that overall, and I think that as we go into it more and more, that backstory will become clear. We're dealing with it more. The basic setup, this Ultimates, that they have to figure out how to stop the Maker before he comes back in 18 months. That's the whole play. But it just felt weird. I kind of at this point for the first round of things, at least the first trade, you kind of just want origins. You kind of just want to have fun. And I think that backstory might end up, because I think you would agree with me. A lot of people jumped in when they heard how good Ultimate Spider-Man was. They weren't reading the Ultimate Invasion or Ultimate Universe. They just jumped in when the books came out.
That's right. I think that's what's happened.
And that's what people are arguing about the X-Men and stuff like that. When I say, well, this world doesn't have this or that, they throw up their hands and don't know what they're saying. And it's not their fault, you know, because I had problems. We said I read Ultimate Invasion and Ultimate Universe, and was a bit wonky as well.
Same here. I'll tell you what, Jim, you know, despite the flaws with this, there's something about it that got me, and it does feel big. It feels like it's the start of something big, and I hope I'm not going to be disappointed.
And it felt like you said, big things, and they're gathering a team. People are going to start
the team together.
That's really cool. So you end up having the big play of Hank and Janet in this. Hank might slap some people, I don't know. Hank ends up killing a bunch of frost giants. I thought he ended up killing... They might be frost giants. They're just giants or trolls. I ended up thinking that he killed that Captain Britain. I was very happy. That guy's a jerk. But he seemed to have got away. They
took his eye, at least. He got his eye. An eye for an eye, Jim.
Yeah, and that was one of the things. I'm glad you brought that up, too, as last bit. When they ended up saying that, like, oh, man, you know, this Captain Britain, he's mad at me because I ended up making him only having, you know, one eye. And I'm looking in the art, and I'm like, I don't see what you're saying. I thought he had an eye patch or something. Then finally, you do see that white eye, but it took a bit, and the art never really popped to me. It never really had that like big feel to it, but hopefully we get used to that and it continues being really good. But the next book is a book that me and you both like as well. It's Get Fury #2, written by Garth Ennis, art by Jason Burrows, $3.99, and it's Garth Ennis doing, you know, the whole deal with Frank Castle and the story of him going originally to go kill Nick Fury, but it seems like he knows what he's doing, and this whole like crisscross applesauce going on with the military and what they're trying to do. Pretty much they're trying to eliminate the people who have found out about them running drugs, the CIA and this general. And it is pretty despicable. They're sending drugs back to the U.S. in caskets of fallen heroes, fallen soldiers. So that right away, they're pretty bad. You get a little convoluted story in this middle of how they're setting it up and these 3 agents who were killed. And it kind of pulled me out a little bit just because I don't think you have to be that convoluted with it. It's already good enough to have, oh my God, they're sending drugs through the caskets of the deal. But this was just to set up this big wow moment of, oh no, they thought that Nick Fury was on them. That's why they set up this whole thing of him getting killed by Frank. Now they realize it wasn't Nick. It was Frank, who now is probably going to try and save Nick Fury. And the whole thing is going to end up at that Hanoi Hilton, things like that. And you do get some action movie deal where Frank kind of pretends he's Russian. And it's kind of goofy and funny. But it was still good, right?
I enjoyed that. That part was probably my favorite scene in the book. Yeah, when he's like trying to speak Vietnamese with a Russian accent, I guess. But the size of like Frankie's bloody huge, isn't he? He could he pass as a Russian, Jim? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And the funny play is him in Vietnam. They're like, yeah, he's not going to be able to pass as a Vietnamese guy. I mean, he's huge and he's going. So he was thinking, and it is a smart thing. You know, Garth Ennis, I didn't even think of that. And I'm like, oh my God. But one of the other things that made me giggle, I don't know about you, but Frank's in this jet and they're going to end up, he's going to, you know, eject. He's going to go and parachute down. The minute he ejects, this jet gets shot down It's like the worst.
I felt so bad for that pilot because he was talking about that, wasn't he? He said, like, as long as they don't fire, like, whatever, there's something rocket out, should be okay. And then you see this rocket going straight for the plane.
I'm like, oh my God.
No.
So that was crazy. You end up really hating that CIA guy. That head CIA guy is a slimy bastard.
Oh, he's a scumbag.
I can't stand him. Yeah. He's such a scumbag. And the interaction with Frank, being there trying to pretend to be a Russian, was really good. But by the end, what you get also is the first issue had pretty much flaying the side of a guy's face.
Some horrific scenes were horrific. Yeah.
In this one, I'll let you tell people what it was. It's bad. I mean, it is really bad. And it's crazy that you have it, but also it is that whole imprint, that whole Max deal. So it works out, but you tell him what he did. It's disgusting.
It's a frightening scene. We see like the aftermath of an attack on a village, just a random village, and the guards take who is it? It's not Frank, is it? They got Nick Fury with him. Yeah, Nick Fury, and we presume a dead body on the floor with his guts all over the place. Well, this guy's not quite dead yet, and you know how we found out? Because the guard sticks Nick Fury's head into his like intestines, and the guy kind of half wakes up. It's just horrible. Do you think Garth put this in because he's Garth, or what?
Yeah, I think that was his deal. I think it's Garth being Garth, as you said. And
don't read this when you have your brekkie or your dinner, or whatever you do.
Oh, it's the worst. If you have the English breakfast, you're just getting to the big beans. He doesn't even look like it. And the whole play was
black pudding, love.
Oh my God, I hate it. They end up where he's mad because this village has been ripped apart by bombings by the Americans, so he ends up grabbing Nick Fury. But when you see that guy is still alive, you're like, geez, I don't know who's suffering more.
It's horrific, but it's actually a very human scene, isn't it? Because you think, you see like a genuine reaction to this, this Vietnamese guard. It's just like, what have you done?
And the thing that got me afterwards, after he did it, he seemed like spent, like he was bent over, like he didn't know.
He was shocked.
He really was. That really sold the scene. But really, all this is it does set up. Now, I think maybe they'll send other guys in to stop. Who knows what's going to go on? But they have actually sent Frank, thinking that, oh my God, he's so over the top and he can do this job, to kill Nick. Now realizing that Frank knows what they were doing, so it's going to be more revenge. But Frank's got to survive until Nick. But Nick has to survive to get to the Hanoi Hilton. So it's well done. I thought it was really good. I didn't like it as much as the first issue, but I still think it's part of the best of the week.
That first was a cracker. It was a really, really good opening issue.
And now we'll go to the next book, which is just a book that I suggest, and it's Wolverine Blood Hunt #1. I haven't loved the Blood Hunt, and I haven't loved the tie-ins. This one I liked, and I didn't expect anything of it. It's written by Tom Waltz, who does the TMNT stuff. Art by Juan Jose Rip, and the art has a weird feel to it, but it still looks pretty good. But what it's doing, since it's Wolverine, and what do? I ended up talking to somebody about this. You're in between Krakoa and the new books of the X-Men. You have this blood hunt, so you can't really do anything really new with Wolverine. You could go generic, and he could be a Marge Report doing things, whatever. But instead, what you end up having Tom Waltz do is grab some of the stuff from Ben Percy's just recently ended run. And you grab Louise, this French girl who ended up being turned into a vampire. That works out. That's part of the deal. And then you also have Bannister, that agent that was part of the run. And he's giving, Wolverine some intel on these things. And then by the end, it kind of ties into Weapon X stuff. And it ends up showing you that even some people just had decided to go with the vampires just because they think they'd be the winners. But in the meantime, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was really one of those where even if you're not reading the Blood Hunt and you like Wolverine, especially if you like Ben Percy's run, you get some characters. And this Louise character, I really did like when she popped up. She kind of just disappeared. And so it's cool to see her again. But I'm not going to go too much. It's a Blood Hunt tie-in, so I'm not going to go too much into it. It's not a mind bender. But I actually thought that it was done pretty well. And it actually shocked me. That's why I put it on my list, and probably that might be my favorite Marvel book this week, so it's kind of crazy.
No way.
All that,
Jim, can I ask,
I really liked it.
Does this work as a kind of, can you just come into this without reading any of the other stuff?
Yeah, I don't think you have to be in it at all. I mean, I bet you that some people, if they haven't read anything of the Ben Percy deal, and when Louise shows up, they might think it's Elsa Bloodstone, except her hair is a little different. But it kind of works the same way. I mean, she's like this French girl. She's vampire. She actually has learned, because he ended up sending her to this alt dimension deal of all vampires. So she learned how to keep the craving. She's almost like a Blade-esque type deal. And I always liked her. I thought it's a cool look. Almost looks like that, what was that one comic with the nun? It was like some crazy over-the-top nun. I can't even remember what it was. It was like
Nuns on the Run? Oh, no, that's Robbie Coltrane, isn't it? I just looking at it, I'm scrolling through the issue now, and the art's it's interesting, but she looks awesome. She looks really good in this.
Yeah, you know what I'm
she?
saying? Yeah. I wish I could remember. I think it's like Battle Nun, maybe? It's a weird thing. That's what it reminds me of, and whatever. I might have made it up in my mind. But even Bannister's in there, like I said, if you read the thing. So I think it's pretty much my favorite tie-in so far.
I'll check it out on your recommendation because I've not read it yet. Nice one.
And like I said, you can even go in it just Wolverine's story where he's fighting vampires. So, because at the end you get some cool twist and what he's going to be going against. And it gets very personal. It just plays out like an action movie. But that is it for the big two. We're going to move on to gray territory because we're going to hit the indie. And you have the first two books all by yourself. I haven't read these. One of them I watched your review, and people should go and check out the link in the show notes to go and check out your review for it because I thought it was an awesome review. But you give us what books you're talking about.
Okay, I'll talk about that one first because Jamie's got one of the longest titles in comic book history, hasn't it? And getting a bit of criticism for that. But this is Falling in Love on the Path to Hell, issue 1, written by Jerry Duggan with art by Gary Brown, colours by Chris O'Halloran. And I've just written a very, very short review. This basically sums it up. It's a mashup of Western and samurai genres that goes in an unexpected direction at the end. The art by Gary Brown was really atmospheric. It's fluid. It's exciting. Jim, some of the martial arts scenes are really well done in this. You know, if you've got any interest in that, I think this guy who does the art, he knows what he's doing. Whether he does it himself or he's like researched it. It's clearly been made by love. Made with love by the creators. So I'm in for the ride.
Yeah, I started reading it. I saw your review and I started reading it. What I was reading so far, I really did like. And, Jerry Duggan, I'm not a huge fan.
Hit and
right?
miss
Yeah,
for me.
he is kind of hit or miss. But I think that I keep finding a lot of these writers, when they end up doing some indie stuff, it's better because they're more into it. They're more inspired. They're characters that they can end up creating, but also, taking different ways. And there's a bit of that surprise to it than just reading like an X-Men book or a Batman book or something like that.
Exactly. It's something different. It's probably like pulpy indie. And what do you think of the cover? Is that like a kind of a nod of the head to the classic Star Wars poster, the original one?
And that's the thing. It's a nod to the classic Star Wars poster, but also seems to pull in that classic Japanese Star Wars poster that ended up where they had one where it did seem like almost like a samurai armor on that as well. That's really cool.
Darth Vader does look like a samurai, doesn't it? Samurai armor. Yeah.
That was definitely the inspiration. So it's cool. Some of the foreign posters to the Star Wars stuff are like the greatest posters of all time. They're so cool, but they don't look anything like Star Wars. They end up getting all wacky, but I do like seeing those. But the cover is awesome. And I wish, because we ended up where we get some review copies and I go through and they don't spell them out well. You don't get full names. I see what the deal is, but if I would have seen the cover, I definitely would have read it. If the cover is that good. And
that's what got me to read it, Jim, because I'm the same. I'd heard nothing about it. It kind of came out of nowhere, but I just saw this cover. It's like, this sounds intriguing. It looks intriguing. It sounds good on the synopsis. So yeah, give it a shot. If you like action, you like a bit of samurai and Western action, I think you might like it.
As an aside, if people would want, maybe, at times we can give our cover of the week or something like that. We used to do it on the Marvel show, but this would definitely be my cover of the week. I thought it was awesome. But you continue because you have another one, right?
I've got one more, and this again came out of nowhere. But if people have ever read Little Bird, they might have heard of this. It's called Precious Metal, issue 1. It's from Image again, written by Darcy Van Poelgeest, I think it is.
Okay.
Should we start that again, Jim? Sorry.
You can just keep going. I don't mind. It sounded like somebody coming into a convenience mart. I don't know where you're recording right now. That's what it sounded. But you go. That name, first off, I will tell you that at points my wife has called me Little Bird, but that was not a good thing. That's what she was doing there.
Every time I see the writer's name, I want to say Darcy Van Poltergeist. I know that's really mean to do
it's
that.
Darcy Van Poltergeist. You keep going. I don't like editing things, so we're just going with it. So you hit it. I want to hear you say that again. I want to hear this name again.
Okay, Darcy Van Poelgeest, and the art is by Ian Bertram. It's got a kind of Travis Moore psychedelic style, Trad Moore style to the art. Visually mind-blowing. Sci-fi, fantasy, strong dose of psychedelics, Jim. I just thought it was like refreshing to get a very original, weird, almost bande dessinée, the French style sci-fi art series. 56 pages. It's a long read, and I think it's is it $5.99? Just double checking. Yeah, $5.99, but like almost 60 pages.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. I swear to God, what is that sound?
I'm just going to have to mute. It's somebody at the door. I'll be right back.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
You just go. The idea
you
of
go
it
for it.
Yeah, I will go because that's the precious metals, and we'll just continue on as Greg goes. I swear to God, it sounded like he was at a convenience mart buying like hot dogs or something. But we will move it. Maybe we'll get back to that book by the end when he comes back. But what I end up having as my last pick, and it was a surprise to me, it's Space Ghost #2. I did not like the first issue at all. I thought the first issue was very generic. I didn't think that it set up the story well. I thought that it was rushed to a point where people who didn't know Space Ghost would have some problems, but that is actually rectified in this issue as we go back to Ghost World, and you get a background of Space Ghost. You get the origin things, you get all that, and you end up getting Jace and Jan and Blip and some fun moments with the kids as well, where Space Ghost pretty much tells them, I want you to be here. You're going to be safe, whatnot, but don't touch anything. Next thing you know, Jace is in a rocket. He's firing off with Blip. And one of the big mysteries is, why do the bad guys want to get Blip the monkey? And we kind of know that it was some research, but not exactly everything about it from that. But again, as somebody who has seen the original Space Ghost cartoon, I'll tell you, there's not a ton to the original Space Ghost cartoon either. It did end up having some comic book, series that worked out some things that were pretty cool. But most people know it from Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Obviously, we're not going to get that. And that's what, in the first issue, I thought that David Pepose kind of left some people behind in my mind, not really spelling out things and having some weird plays with Brack and things like that. But in this one, he kind of comes down, gives you some origin, gives you some going forward stuff. So I thought that it was pretty good. Overall, I thought that it was one of the best of the week. So I'll tell you, I'm not a huge fan of his, but I'll give him some credit where credit's due. Are you back, Greg?
I am back. I'm sorry about that.
That's
okay.
You
won't believe what we just got. We got a delivery from one of my wife's students of fresh maguro, which is tuna. Fresh tuna, Jim.
You son of a gun.
Sorry about that.
Is it actually like cut into like flour, or is it actually like sushi style?
It's just been, just prepared like sashimi sushi style. So can't wait to have that for lunch. Sorry about the ding dong in the background.
I know, the ding dong. I'm mad that I don't have sushi. I ended up going this so funny, the idea that you're sitting there in Japan talking about sushi, and I'm going to bring up my grocery store sushi from Giant that I love, and I usually go on Wednesday to get it's half price. They have like a special, so I can get two, and I usually get like a crunchy shrimp roll, and then also a bunch of spicy tuna deal. And I went there, and they didn't have any. They were all out. I was so mad. I went. I didn't even go at like a weird time. I went like a little bit before dinner, but usually they have a ton. I think maybe people aren't buying it as much as they were hoping, and that they're like not making as much now.
What you didn't realize, Jim, is that Davey Pepose had actually bought the last 2 packs before you went in.
Then. I'll take Space Ghost off the
Start
list.
Your vendetta again.
I do want to say, let's go back just a tiny bit, and you could tell about Precious Metal just real quick again, because you had just started.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. It's just, as I say, it came out of nowhere. It's a very, very original take on a kind of sci-fi fantasy story of some kind of kid who's being tracked across different planets. I don't know how to describe it. I say, I've gone in cold. I haven't read Little Bird. It says this is a prequel to Little Bird, so you don't have to have read that. But, it's the same artist, the same writer. And it's just, it's something, it feels original. I'm always looking for kind of a weird, original, a bit of a 2000 AD vibe, but when it used to be really good, Jim, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that I saw somebody had mentioned recently this week on one of the videos I did that they're like, I'm just going to stick with the 2000 AD. I don't hear people say that as much anymore.
No, it used to be amazing.
I mean, legit, I actually get the 2000 AD review copies, and I think I sent a couple to you at points, and I always forget about them. It always just like leaves my mind. I've tried to get into it. My problem is that when I go, you have like this story's at chapter 8, that story's at 1, that story's at 2. Occasionally each year they'll have that, hey, everybody, here's the jumping on point, and I always miss it. I guess I could go back to it. Nothing would stop me. because I really do want to get into it. I just never was able to. But again, like you're saying, you're almost hinting that the idea that it's not been great. It's not the golden age.
I try and jump in and out every now and then, like you say, and nothing's really. There's a few stories which kind of caught your eye, and they do release them as like trades now, so might go check it out. But
I remember the last time I tried to get in, if this makes sense, and I might be thinking of Dan Abnett was doing a couple stories.
Yes, he does a lot in there. Yeah.
So I think there was a story that people had told me you should check this out, and I kind of did, and I liked it enough, but then I fall behind and things like that, so it's crazy.
It's weekly. You just can't keep up with it.
Yeah, I think that's the point too. And again, it's so different the way it's set up. It just screws me. It's a weird deal. Though every time I say that, somebody will say it's not set up weird. It's very easy. For some reason, it feels weird me jumping in. But we say that probably when we're done, I'm going to go see if I don't remember. I think might have cut me off from the copies just because I haven't done anything with them. But who knows? But that's it. That is it, where we went longer than I thought, but I did add that extra book with the David P. Post deal, so just so people know I don't have a vendetta, but we're back doing this. At points, we may have some things pop up. One of the big things is I do like doing it with Gray, but he is in Japan, and I'm outside of Philadelphia, and we do have a crazy time difference, so that is kind of what happens between or both of us, yeah.
But I appreciate you, Jim. Appreciate you getting in contact with me and doing another show.
I'll be busy, but you're not, and you're busy, and I'm not. It goes back and forth with that. So with that, though, I do like to do this with you. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Gray, check the show notes, especially to go to Gray's channel, where he does some awesome reviews. And if, again, it got me to that Jerry Duggan book. I never would have known anything about it. When I saw your review, it wasn't just the idea of, well, you just say it looked great and your review was great. So everybody check that out, please. And with all that, we will talk to you later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.